What's the deal, everybody? Welcome back to the studio. Jeremy Deal here, and today we got another quick one for you. We're going to be talking about my settings for the A7 IV whenever I'm doing real estate video. I'll tell you why I use these settings in particular, even though there's nothing really special about them. Let's get into it. All right, to start this off, like I said, A7 IV using video. I am actually using the 1080 and not the 4K 60 because I'm using a full frame lens and the 4K crop is too much to deal with. If you've seen my last videos, you know I'm still looking for that Loa 9mm. So if anybody has one they want to hook me up with to try, let's go. But I have not bought any APS-C lenses in particular. That kind of drives me nuts about this system. But I have been using the 1080 60 and it's actually beautiful. Surprise. If you saw some of my first videos, you know I was using my 12-24 f4 G lens, not the G Master, for my video, and I was having this issue with like softness and graining. It just wasn't good. I was having bad results, but I should tell you that now I've switched around and I've started using my Loa 12mm ND 2.8 and the images are much sharper, cleaner, crisper, everything about the video with that lens is much better than the lens I was using before. So that did remedy a lot of my problems. Another thing I started doing is I actually started shooting at a much higher or a much more overexposed image. I came from shooting with the GH5S where you really had to find that delicate balance between overexposed and perfectly exposed because of the windows. It doesn't deal with highlight recovery very well, but the A7 IV does a much better job of highlight recovery. So getting used to shooting at a much higher or blown out around that 1.7 mark did decrease a lot of the grain issues that I was having. So let's talk about the actual settings that I'm using now that you know that I'm using the 12mm Loa on the 1080 60 frames a second 10-bit color. Best thing about this camera. All right, let's go for it. So first thing you should know is that I am actually using just the standard S-Log3 profile. A lot of people that are using this camera mainly for people use the Cinetone feature, and I have tried that, but the problem is that it seems to accentuate the yellows and oranges in houses, which is something you're trying to avoid during real estate video. So I keep my S-Log3 tried and true. No Cinetone for my real estate videos. When I'm doing videos of agent walkthroughs or agent introductions, I will use the S-Cinetone. The Cinetone, I believe, is picture profile 11 and the S-Log3 is picture profile 8, if I'm not mistaken. And as I said before, I keep both of those stock, even though I am kind of experimenting a little bit with the blacks on the S-Log3, trying to fine tune what actually comes out. So, as you know, those are my settings and the reason why I use them. The Loa 9mm luckily goes down to a 2.8 and it is still very sharp down here. One disadvantage is that I cannot use the focus mapping feature with the Loa, which I don't understand why I can use peaking but not focus mapping. But either way, I digress. I can't use focus mapping, which I was loving that advantage for this camera. It really does help. So I'm back to peaking. So I will still occasionally get a little softness because the peaking is not perfect. Even though I do zoom in, you know how these real estate video shoots go. You are running and gunning, hustling, doing photos and video at the same time. So sometimes some things slip through. Another reason I'm using the S-Log3 is because not only does it have the most dynamic range of all the picture profiles, it is the most editable when you get back into whatever your editing platform may be, whether it's Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut, or anything else you may be using. The log footage will be much easier to grade. As I mentioned earlier, the Cinetone will enhance the yellows and oranges, which I personally don't like the look of in my videos. Another reason I use the S-Log is because its dual native ISO, quote unquote, is a little bit higher. The Cinetone is 125 and 500 base ISOs, and the S-Log3 is 800 and 3200. That 3200 is where I try and live while I'm using the camera and just adjust aperture from there. But what I find is in a lot of these smaller houses where it's very dark, I actually have to crank that ISO up. But I have noticed, just as I said in the beginning of this video, really overexposing much more than I did on the GH5S, and using that highlight recovering abilities of the A7 IV has really allowed me to reduce the grain even on ISOs that are not the base. Whenever I used the GH5S, I basically lived on 1600 ISO, and I would move aperture back and forth from there unless I was outside. With the A7 IV, I've noticed a lot of times I've got to crank past that 3200 ISO as a base, so I'm shooting more like 64,000 ISO sometimes, but it seems like these are still coming out nice and clean as long as I am overexposing for those shadows in particular. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. I hope that helps you. If you got the A7 IV and you were looking for some base information on doing it for a real estate video, there you go. As always, keep rocking and rolling. Enjoy what you're doing. Make smart business decisions. Use these basic settings, and I'll catch you next time.